66%, 2/3 said we're likely to do it. 12% jury were still unsure. 22% were unlikely. Again, I think that number has gone down over the past year. So now perhaps it's more like 10 or 15% that would be unlikely. And a large majority would say they use Zoom. What percent of the mediations would you like to attend online? That is, what's your preference? And this is only 6 months in. Over half of them said between half and 3/4. 22% said 3/4 or more of my cases I'd like to do online. Then about 24, there's your 25% again saying not many of my cases. But look, 6 months in, you've got a large majority saying they want over half their cases online. I think this is the future. These are what the clients wanted 6 months ago, a year ago. They would want it even more now. Why? More convenience, no travel costs, as we said before, less small talk, straight down to business. Adjusters, claims people are more present by video than they were before on the phone. Well, this is a pandemic thing right now. I don't want to be in the same room with other people. I can do other work. Don't have to sit around a conference room not knowing what to do. Could go into the evening. Didn't have to anyone leaving for the airport. So all of those seem to be reasons why people are going to continue to do it. And I'm getting more comfortable. And that was 6 months in, not 2 years in. So that seems to be the reality. And I'll just add a few things from a more recent survey of mediators. Let's see if I can find it. I need to stop the share for a moment. I need to make sure I'm not there. Get out of this and see if I can find the, yes. I'm going to get back up again, share screen again. And this is a more recent member survey of the 750 mediators. And what percentage of your cases have been conducted by video? The answer is 90% plus are being conducted by video as of this summer. More interestingly, the question was, what's your settlement rate being? And 78% of them say, we're settling the same percentage of cases. Some are saying better. So now we're up to 88% saying the same or better, and about 11% saying worse. So overwhelmingly, people are content with their ability to get cases resolved in this new format. The positive feedback, cost and time effective, cost and time efficiencies, just as effective. People are more engaged, people are more attentive, faster resolution. The negatives, the ones you'd expect, not enough personal reaction. We still have some technical issues. Participants are less engaged, and so on. What percentage of your cases are still online into next year? Still a large majority online. And are you picking up more clients? Yes, because it's easier to meet people and less travel problems. And now they get into whether they're raising their hourly rates or not, which I don't think are so relevant to us. But the point is, mediation is here to stay. I'm sorry, mediation by Zoom is here to stay. And it will long after the pandemic is over, I think. I think this is irreversible. I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions before we move on to the next issue, which is sharing a mediator's powers, how lawyers advocate, and how maybe mediators can respond. No thoughts? I will go ahead. This topic, a little like my first one of evaluation, is a little bit controversial. That is, there are people who think mediators don't have power. We're entirely facilitative. We simply are there. Except, I think you saw this morning, even facilitated mediators exercising power over the agenda, what people will say, when they will be together, when they will be apart. and many other things. And the lawyers in the United States have become quite used to this, and they really like mediation. They use it voluntarily, and they do it because it works for them. So, how does it work for them? A couple of things. Mediators don't have, of course, power to decide a case or impose a solution, but we have power over the process, managing the agenda, gathering information, transmitting information, influencing parties and lawyers, and I think affecting the outcome in many ways. We have to be careful about how we use that power. That's another question. So the traditional approaches were sort of like a boxing glove or a telephone. The mediator job is to sort of keep the parties from hurting each other, carrying messages back and forth, avoiding confrontations, censoring when people get too angry. And actually, disputants used harder, more competitive tactics because they knew they could. As a judge, mediator would listen to both sides, let them bargain into impasse, and then basically say, here's what I think you should do. And everyone would say, oh, okay, now I understand, we'll do it. Those are sort of the traditional approaches. The alternative is to think of it as a hybrid process. It's assisted negotiation. But if you are an advocate, there are things you can do as an advocate to be effective. You can use your same talents and techniques. So the question is, how do you use the process to enhance my ability to negotiate? And I think you need to modify tactics from what you would do in a traditional judicial process. It's through joint sessions a unique opportunity to talk directly to the decision maker on the other side. But they are not a judge. They are not neutral. They, of course, believe on their side. So you have to think about how to deal with them. Also, negotiation changes. You now have at least two negotiating partners. You're certainly negotiating with your opponent, but frankly, you are negotiating with a mediator at times about what the mediator will do next. And mediators, you are negotiating with the parties as well as helping them negotiate, because at times they are asking you to do things and you have to decide what you're willing to let them do, what you're willing to do for them, and when you're willing to say, no, I don't think this is the right time. And then, of course, if you have outside decision makers, you have a family member, you have a claims person for an insurance company, you have a CEO who isn't at the mediation, you're negotiating with them too. The good news is that unlike lawyer negotiations where, at least in America, it's done by telephone or Zoom and the clients aren't there, the clients are present. At the same time, they spend most, if not all of their time in America in separate rooms. So the first thing I think you can do with mediation is you can use it to shape the field, is what I would say, to begin to get mediators to organize things so that the mediation will be successful. So, for example, I had a dispute in which a software engineer had left a company and joined another company far away. The first company said, you are in violation of your contract. You can't compete with us. And they sued her. But the real dispute was within the second company, which would be paying for any settlement or other measures. So the lawyer got me involved, said, okay, you're our mediator. We're happy to have you. And now for our mediation, saying it was partly my mediation, you really need to get the chief lawyer for the defense company there. The defendant company was in California. The lawyer had absolutely no interest in coming and said, look, we're not a party. You're suing the employee. I'm not going to be there. I said to her, you know, you are a key person here. You are going to be making the decisions. I think it's really important you be part of this. This was before Zoom. So she agreed to be on the telephone starting at 6:30 in the morning in California, 9:30 on the East Coast of the US, and to attend every session in person by telephone. And having the presence of her there was absolutely essential to reach an agreement. So it's an example of a lawyer using the mediator to get someone else to the table. who would not have been there in a direct negotiation. Or to get information. Insurance companies especially tell me, well, we don't know enough about the case yet. They haven't told us why they have these large medical bills. They haven't explained what their damages are. If we don't know that, we can't get authority to pay them money. Please tell them that. And so I go to the plaintiff and I say, you know, plaintiff, if you want them to show up with a big checkbook, you must give them certain data about the case. That's how companies work. And plaintiffs usually want insurance companies to be there with large checkbooks. And so they're often willing to give me data and let me give it to the other side that they would not turn out themselves. What else? I think good lawyers move issues onto the mediator's radar screen, I'll call it. They get the mediator involved and tell the mediator what they would like the mediator to focus on. Should it be money? Should it be on a repair of the relationship? Is it on some other outside goal? I, as a mediator, don't know, but it could be explained to me, and good lawyers will explain it. And if they do that, they're doing good advocacy, and they're making things better for their clients. So, video. I'm going to show you video, and again, I'm going to ask you, would you use these techniques if you're a lawyer, or any of them you think not appropriate to use? And as a mediator, would you refuse to do some of the things these lawyers are asking? And if so, which ones would you say, no, that is not part of what I do. I'm not willing to do it. Here, we're going to focus on one case and only one case. And let me explain to you what it is. That's so I can take you through different parts of the case. It involves a resort. It was opening. It had a theater. It wanted very spectacular effects. So it agreed to buy large lifts for their stage that would lift actors sort of from nowhere up onto the stage. The parties agree in principle to buy the lifts from somebody called Fine Arts Fabricators. The contract is signed in April. The resort is opening in June. Contract says the lifts are due in 12 weeks. 12 weeks from when they agreed in principle would be early June, in time for the opening. 12 weeks from when it was signed would be in July, after the opening began. Actually, the lifts arrived 5 days before the opening, and they were too big. The base of each lift was much larger than the specifications in the contract. The contractor said, well, that's necessary to meet the kind of weight requirement of lifting the power that you want. But the truth is, the lifts didn't fit in the openings in the stage. They couldn't be used as they were. So the plaintiff refuses delivery, cancels the opening week, refunds all the opening tickets, and tones down and simplifies its performances for the first summer. 6 months later, they buy replacement lifts, which have a higher price, a small base that will fit in the stage, but they won't lift as much. And then they sue the defense for almost $2 million. They want their deposit returned. They want the revenue that they had to refund for the first week. They want the extra cost of buying the lifts from a Canadian company. And they say we lost $800,000 on summer revenues, and we lost another $800,000 in bad reputation because our performances weren't as good as they should be. So that's the case. Now, let me show you both a bad first conversation with a lawyer and a good first conversation with a lawyer, and see if you agree with me that there is a significant difference. So here's the first, less effective conversation. Oh, wait a second, I need to know. I want to make sure I have the proper sound.
Hello, this is Linda Singer.
Linda, this is Tony Fahary. How are you today?
Fine, thanks, Mr. Fahary. What can I do for you?
Well, if you've got some time at the end of next month, we need you for a one-day mediation to help us with a dispute that I've got for one of my good clients, Culture Bubble. You've probably heard of them. They're out on the western part of the state.
So the end of next month, Culture Bubble is one party. Can you tell me who the other party is?
Well, the other party is really the defendant. They failed to perform completely in connection with the delivery of some engineering necessary for my client's facility, a high-end amusement and entertainment complex out in the Berkshires. They were supposed to deliver some lifts to us. They failed, totally failed in terms of meeting the specifications. They didn't meet the time and caused enormous damage to my client.
Mr. Fraheri, excuse me for just a minute. I don't want to interrupt, but my usual practice is to have a conference call with the two lawyers before we get into the merits. I was just trying to figure out, this is a contracts case. And
But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a flavor here.
let me.
Well, you can get a sense. He's just arguing the case as if you were in front of a court. The mediator wants to know the background. He wants to get the case organized. And she's really not asking for him to give her the full-scale argument that he would if he were arguing to a judge. So it's a problem. Now, let me see if I can move to a different. Sorry, this is taking I can see the computer is going to take me a little more time to get organized because it has been operating for quite some time. So here's a more effective call.
Hello, this is Linda Singer.
Hello, my name is Ann Santos. I'm an attorney from the Boston area, and I represent my client who is in a contract dispute.
Okay, sorry. Want to make sure that everyone can see this, but I think you can.
With one of his business partners, and I was interested in talking to you about a potential mediation.
Can you just tell me very briefly what kind of case this is?
Certainly. My client owns a small business, and he was hired to create specialized lifts to use in a performance. There was a dispute about the quality of the lifts, whether the lifts fit. My client is in a business that he started, and he feels desperate that his reputation is on the line. Certainly there are financial damages. Can you please tell me a little bit about your process in mediation?
I like to get something in writing before the day of the mediation so that I know some of the basics. Generally, those statements are submitted confidentially. What do you think?
Well, actually, both myself and my client would be interested in it not being confidential, in us seeing, we would willingly give over our statement. We could see what the other side was saying. So no one's playing hide the ball, that we know what's on the table.
So here the thing is that many lawyers instinctively do not want the other side to see their papers and to see the other side, have to see the other side what the arguments are. And the mediator is assuming that neither side will see the other. The lawyer actually would prefer that both sides, she wants to see what the other side is saying. She's willing to have the other side see what she has, and she's suggesting a different format, a different way of proceeding. And because she makes the suggestion, the mediator has to think, well, would I be willing to do that?
So I need to see if it's okay with the other party to exchange these in advance of the mediation. That might be helpful. I generally begin with the parties in an opening joint session to allow at least the lawyers to talk to the decision makers on the other side.
I think that sounds great, and in fact, we actually would be interested in having an opening session where the clients can participate.
That's fine with me. I would encourage that.
So again, what's happening is the mediator is assuming it'll be as usual, just the lawyers talking. The lawyer is saying, well, actually, let's have the clients talk too. And the mediator's general attitude is, well, yes, of course, that's fine. Why not? Can go back and forth, but the interesting thing to me is a lawyer trying to shape the way the process will happen. And by shaping the way the process will happen, affecting it. Of course, the mediator has to agree to do it, but it is a little bit like being in a restaurant. You can say, I've hired a wonderful chef, and therefore I'll just wait and see what the chef orders, cooks up for me. Or you can say, I'm in a good restaurant, and I would like to order from the menu. I can't tell the chef that he has to cook what I want, but my chances of getting what I want are much higher if I tell the chef what it is I'd like to eat. Same thing here. Lawyers who are active and who make clear what they would like have a better chance of getting it, as long as they are polite, they are friendly, they seem to be trying to promote a useful process that will produce a result. So, goals for the opening session. I think your goals are, you're trying to convince your opponent, and now I'm talking to the lawyers, and think about you as a mediator, how you would handle this. You're willing to compromise, you want a solution, but if you have to, you're willing to litigate, and the other side faces a serious risk and costs if you do. So there's a mixed message here. You have an olive branch and you have a sword, and you have to be careful to let the other side see both of them. You're trying to maybe gather information. Sometimes you're trying to provide information directly to the decision maker on the other side without going through the lawyer. You're trying to influence what we talk about. Will it be money? Will it be something else? And in the end, you want to affect their expectations and understand that they're going to have to compromise to get a settlement. To do that, generally, I find lawyers more effective when they speak in a conversational tone. They're not in court. They're, when we directly with each other in a conference room. On Zoom, they're with these tiles. A conversational tone works better than the kind of oratory that you would use in court. And if possible, I do think it's very helpful to get your client to talk, because people pay much more attention to a client than they do to a lawyer. If there are any exhibits, visual aids, you can take an email that is very helpful to your case, and you can enlarge it and put it on a foam core board or put it on a PowerPoint so that you can show it. I think that has much more impact. Again, the decision maker on the other side may never have seen this particular item and was seeing it for the first time. The other thing I would suggest is that to minimize animosity, you focus on what a court is likely to find, not try to convince them that you are right about what happened. They will never agree about that, but they may agree that a court might find that it happened. I would try to avoid making accusations, and I'd alert the mediator, if I had to cushion the accusations. Examples. Let me see if I can pull up a video and give you one. I'm going to skip over an ineffective opening session because ineffective. Well, here is a more effective. The ineffective is simply ranting, saying we're right, you're wrong, this is outrageous, you don't have a case, you'll lose in court, and obviously the other side isn't willing to listen. So let me begin to share.
We'd like to thank you for this opportunity to really present the set of circumstances that brings us here today. We're here because we're determined to try to make the mediation work. We intend to approach this in good faith, and we intend to be as reasonable as is possible under the circumstances.
So there is the olive branch of peace.
But with all of that as sort of prologue, we have to begin with an understanding that there's been a breach of contract here. Promises were made, and the promises were to deliver on time and to deliver on spec. And at least from our standpoint, what we saw was a product that didn't get delivered on time and, for whatever reason, was unusable by us. these lifts, which were really an essential part of the whole performance at the facility, were spec'd out, and the time for delivery, that was all understood by everybody. I mean, it's a short season. We knew that if the lifts got there by the 7th of June, they could be installed by the 22nd when opening day was going to occur. Again, for whatever reason, that didn't happen. When the lifts finally arrived, they were completely out of spec. We couldn't fit them into the facility, and so we had to find another manufacturer, and the damages to us, and I think CJ could talk to this, were very significant. So
they were extremely significant. I'd like to underscore the context that Tony has already mentioned because it's so important to us. We communicated extremely clearly that this was our grand opening. This was the big thing, the big show. And if that had gone well as we had hoped, the summer would have been hugely successful. As it was, we were relatively successful, but the reduction in sales that we suffered are attributable to this mistake. So the direct consequences, we had to order replacement lifts later that cost us more money, significantly more money. The sales during the summer were very problematic. In fact, we had sold tickets to an opera show for $60,000. We had to return all of those tickets. Not only is that a huge financial loss, but it's embarrassing. It's a terrible knock on our reputation.
From the FAF perspective, Mr. Kaplan, Ms. Santos?
Certainly. My client has been involved in FAF for 25 years. In fact, he created the business and is co-founder based on his love of fine arts and the theater. Culture Bubble met with my client and in March started talking about creating these lifts for the theater. And the specs weren't quite ready. There was still some talks about finalizing them. It was not until mid-April that the contract was actually signed. My client suggests that that's when the clock should start ticking for the 12-week period.
Mr. Kaplan, would you like to add something at this point?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, as Ann said, we really try very hard in FAF, and our goal is to make the customer happy. And what bothers me personally, other than my reputation being damaged, is that they return these lifts without even calling us, without talking to us, without giving any opportunity to come in and fix the problem.
So that's the kind of opening session that, whoops.
it brings us here.
Let me stop this there. These kinds of opening sessions are actually disappearing in the United States because lawyers insist on being strong, abrasive advocates, and people are saying this is not helpful. So while I still have them on the East Coast in Boston, on the Western United States, they do not have opening sessions anymore. And I think that's a loss. And it's partly a loss because the lawyers aren't using them in the ways they could. It's unfortunate, but it's a life we're dealing with. I hope you will not deal with it in Africa, I guess I will say. So most of the time in an American mediation, and in my experience in filming in Nairobi as well, most of the time is felt with the parties separated. And so the question becomes, what are the tactics that lawyers are likely to use in these caucuses, these private meetings? I guess my general suggestion, let me see if I can pull it up again, is the questions are you going to let your client talk, or are you going to keep them in the background? Lawyers tend to want to keep them in the background, I think, unless you have a client who's really very unpleasant and unpresentable. Let them talk. The mediator wants to hear from them. Are you going to provide information, or are you going to wait? Are you going to make an offer in the first caucus, or will you just talk about the issues? And I think you have a choice. And then what data can the mediator either gather for me that I would like to get to make a decision, or convey to affect how they make a decision? And I think that's very important. what approach to use? Mediators tend to focus on neutral standards and interests. What do you really want? But the truth is, it's less risky for a lawyer to be difficult and tough and hard in a first caucus meeting because the mediator is there to be the boxing glove, to soften things. The mediator will probably ask for an opening. So I tell lawyers, you either need to have a first offer available, ready to make, or an explanation of why you don't. For example, we want to hear more about the facts first. The other thing is, again, the mediator is going to take your offer and present it in the other room. You can either rely on the mediator to make all the decisions about how that will happen, or you can tell the mediator how you would like the mediator to present your offer, what you would like him or her to say. The mediator ultimately will make the decision, but it's again like ordering in a restaurant. Your chances are better of getting the meal you want if you ask for it. Alternatives is to making an offer is asking for information and maybe indicating that you have flexibility, that you're ready to compromise, but you want to know more before you do. I'll say again, I see lawyers using mediators to cushion the impact of a tough bargaining strategy. And sometimes they send a cooperative private signal and a hard public signal. So they are able to have it two ways. One way with the mediator privately, another way in terms of the signal sent to the other side. And then the question is, well, how will the mediator present it? So let me show you what the plaintiff in the case does. Get it started. Go.
Do you mind if I use personal? Okay. This is a chance for you to tell me what's important to you. What's important to me in resolving this.
First thing to notice is this lawyer is letting his client take the lead. It's hard for lawyers to do that. They want to control their clients. They want to control the presentation, just as if they were in court. But actually, the mediator is most interested in hearing from the client, who probably she has not heard from before, than from the lawyer who she has talked to already.
Resolving the monetary side of things, some compensation to make up for the problems. The problems that we've had for grand opening, as I mentioned already. On a grander level, from my perspective, what I'm looking for is
PowerPoint presentation. We can't see the video.
problem, and I want to be done with it.
Well, let's just.
So the executive says, I want a fair result, but I really want to get this resolved. It's important to my business. So talking about interests that we talk about in mediation. Now the lawyer comes in.
However, we tend to be reasonable, and CJ has made that very clear, but we want to ensure that you understand the strength of our case. And fair compensation is what we're looking for, but that doesn't mean minimal compensation.
Okay, well, in light of our conversation and your frustration that you haven't been able to get anything out of them so far, where do you think we should start today?
Well, I think we should start like where we are today. We've seen our demands. Basically,
We can't see it. The video. Is there a communication from there? We cannot see the video.
our demand is our claim for damages, which is $1.88 million.
And do you think that if I go back to them now with the same number that you put in this complaint, that's going to help you to get fair compensation so people can get back to work?
Hello, Evelyn.
We got to start somewhere.
Evelyn.
From our standpoint, we want to start.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Held on. Sorry, I've been warned that you cannot hear the video, and I'm trying to think what the problem is. I think I know what the problem is. Let me see if I can solve this problem. I sometimes, as I start the video, I am not necessarily always remembering that I have to then go back, stop the video, go back into the share, and pick it up. Okay.
Okay.
So let's go to simply the lawyer's talk. And again, I apologize. Let me make sure, yes, the sound is right. So I think I can do it. All right. So now you can hear the lawyer talk, I think.
To be sure that you understand the strengths of our case. And, you know, fair compensation is what we're looking for, but that doesn't mean minimal compensation.
Okay, well, in light of our conversation and your frustration that you haven't been able to get anything out of them so far, where do you think we should start today?
Well, I mean, I think we should start right where we are today, which is that you've seen our demand, which is basically, you know, $1,000,888.
Well, I've seen the complaint.
Right.
But I haven't seen a demand in mediation.
Well, I understand, but we've gotten nothing from the other side in terms of any kind of an indication to put anything on the table. And so I guess from our standpoint, our demand is our claim for damages, which is $1.88 million.
And do you think that if I go back to them now with the same number that you put in the complaint, that's going to help you to get fair compensation so CJ can get back to work?
Well, we got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And from our standpoint, we want to start in a place where they know that we mean business and that we're prepared to try this case. That's the message I'd like them to hear through you from us.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Well, this is an example of a lawyer being hard and taking advantage of the fact that he knows the mediator will keep the process going. We have a whole phenomenon in America of what I call the insulting first offer. They make offers which insult the other side, and the other side says they're insulted. The mediator keeps the process going, and there are certain psychological reasons why, as a negotiation strategy, starting with a very extreme offer affects the other side's expectations. So the problem is, of course, in regular negotiations, lawyers do it, and the other side says, well, if that's what you're saying, we don't want to talk, and the negotiation breaks down. In a mediation, the negotiation keeps going because the mediator keeps it going. And this is what I mean when I say the lawyers take advantage of this. It is a big problem. I've just been asked by the American Bar Association to do a presentation at their conference next spring on this topic of insulting first offers and what we mediators should do about the fact that people start in such an unreasonable way. However, it's life, at least life as an American mediator, and I've seen the same thing, and I'm told the same thing in Asia. I don't know about Africa, but I suspect also as well. And it's reality, and it's a tactical choice for lawyers. So now let me talk about why. It's interesting. I just did a survey of how often lawyers use mediation in my city without being asked by the court to do it and pay for it, and will pay thousands of dollars to hire a mediator to help them settle a case. It turns out that in accident cases, 2 out of every 3 accident cases that are filed in our courts go to mediation. Lawyers decide they would like to pay for mediation. And they do it, I think, because the mediator helps them deal with their client, helps them manage their client, helps them convince the client that a settlement is a good idea and it makes sense to compromise. And the lawyers are able to be the hard warrior and rely on the mediator to be the peacemaker. And so in a way, they're able to be loyal to their clients and still at the same time have the client move in a direction. And often the clients are very upset and emotional, even in a business case. So let me show you in the defense room how the lawyer uses the mediator to deal with her very angry and emotional client. All right. So this is now in the room of the company that is supplying the lifts and has been sued because they haven't they're the wrong size. Now I'm gonna make sure we share screens so that we get it. Okay, here is again just a minute or 2 minutes, 3 minutes out of the meeting on the other side of the case with the defense.
They're portraying themselves as if they're the victims, and they want about $1.9 million from me because they rejected a lift that I had a contractual right to fix. This doesn't make any sense.
1.88 is where they're starting. Question is,
and I'm not even willing to talk about that if that's where they're starting. It's just ridiculous.
Linda, if I could ask you, what do you think? How do you think we should approach this to try to get to a number that is more reasonable? And Phil understands that there's a strong possibility we will have to pay out something.
have to pay something.
1.88 is ridiculous. How would you suggest? What would you do?
Well,
Notice the lawyer is asking the mediator for advice. When I'm asked for advice, I know the lawyer has a problem with their client and they want me to solve the problem. They want me to come in and be the voice of reason and asking for compromise so that the lawyer doesn't have to tell her client, you really have to compromise if you want to settle this. But she invites the mediator to do it, and the mediator knows exactly what the lawyer is asking for.
my sense is that they're not going to move off the 1.88 until you do something. I don't get any sense that they're stuck there. That's their starting point. And frankly, when they gave it to me, they said they were giving it to me because they hadn't heard anything from you. So they didn't want to move until they did. So I think we have to figure out what initial offer from you makes sense, and preferably make it something that I can explain when I take it into them.
All right. So now the mediator is the one who's saying, you've got to put some money on the table. The lawyer does not have to say it because the mediator is saying it for her.
Okay.
$100,000. I will drop my counterclaim, which I'm claiming for $100,000. If they don't proceed against me, I won't proceed against them.
In this case, the defense reacted to the lawsuit by making its own claim, saying, I was going to make a profit of $100,000 on the contract. I want you to pay me $100,000. So he's now saying, well, I'll drop that claim and nobody will pay anyone anything. That's his first suggestion.
I think they're still going to interpret that as a zero.
I don't know, what do you think?
I think we can go up a little bit. We talked about going up a little bit. But frankly, starting at 1.88 is like starting at zero from
I understand
our
it.
perspective.
It doesn't. So how are we going to get them to move down from the 1.88?
So
What did they lose in the first days? They said they had to cancel for a few days.
It was a week.
They had to cancel for a week. Do we know what that cost them?
Yeah, what they say is $60,000.
Yeah, well, they're also saying 1.88. Why don't we say 30,000?
And is there any rationale for making the 60 into 30? What explanation can I give?
The explanation is I don't think they had to actually cancel the whole week. And even if they did, let's split it. That's my rationale.
Okay.
So first offer at 30.
Yeah, it was
Understanding that there's play.
yes, but not a lot.
Okay, thank you.
So what's been accomplished here? I think what's accomplished is that the lawyer, without having to argue for compromise and look disloyal to her client's cause, has encouraged the mediator to do the work, to be the advocate for peace and for compromise, to suggest that there needs to be a rationale, to suggest that there needs to be some money actually offered, not simply dropping the counterclaim, the other lawsuit. And so the lawyer is using the mediator. If you want an example of why lawyers like using mediation in the United States, it's because we do their work for them. We do the embarrassing work that is hard for a lawyer to do and still be the hard, loyal, vigorous advocate that that they want to be in court. So I guess I would just make the comment, if anyone has a question at any point, feel free to raise your hand, indicate that you have a comment or a question. I'd be happy to stop. I am also happy to continue, but if there are any questions or comments, anything about this that strikes you as, well, I don't know if this would work in Kenya or in Uganda or in Rwanda, or this is interesting and I have a question about it, I would encourage you to either tell me or to tell the organizer in the room, if you are there in person, so that we can talk about it. Okay. That said, let me take you a few hours into the mediation. They're going back and forth and money's being offered. And there's always the possibility, because the defendant has these lifts. The lifts won't fit in the original stage, but the defendant is thinking, well, they may be able to use the lifts for something else, and we cannot use the lifts for anything. They're wasted on us. So they think, we'd like to offer the lifts, but they're also thinking, if we offer them, there's something called reactive devaluation, which is the instinctive reaction of one side to devalue anything offered by the other side. Just because they're offering it must be bad. So they try to get the mediator to make the offer instead of them making the offer, knowing it will be received better if the mediator presents it as her idea. Of course, if you as a mediator are being asked to do that, we say, carry the water for one side with the other, you have to think about whether the other side will react by thinking that you have become, you've taken sides, you're favoring them. So here is what she does. And she also asks a question about what's happening in the other room, which is a sensitive kind of topic, but she's happy to do it. So let's see what happens. So again, here we are well into the mediation, again meeting with the same defense team.
Linda, we were wondering about how you felt about whether they would be willing to take the original lifts for a new event at Culture Bubble. And the lifts are in great condition, they work.
Never been used.
They're very expensive.
Very big.
They're very big, but Culture Bubble is proposing this big venture. So just curious about feeling out the temperature in the other room to see if that's something they would be interested in.
Phil, do you have any knowledge of what else they're doing that might benefit from a big lift?
I don't know what their other projects are, but you know, they have always said that this was just stage one. I assume if they built the openings a little bit bigger in whatever their next project is, these lifts would then become useful again.
I see. So they build the project basically around the lifts.
Well, they are the ones who gave me the specs in the first place.
Yes, that's fair. I'm happy to float the idea. It might help.
Well, do you have any, have you taken the temperature in the other room? Has, CJ was certainly riled up a little bit. And I'm just wondering if she's come off the ledge, if she's starting to think more like a business partner than someone who's been personally attacked.
This is a tough question. The lawyer in this room is asking, is the chief executive on the other side still angry? Has she come off the ledge? She was going to jump off the ledge. Is she willing to talk reasonably about a solution? So what the mediator is being asked is, what is happening in the other room? And you know you are supposed to keep everything confidential. At the same time, you're supposed to promote communication. So it's a little bit of a contradiction. You're keeping everything confidential. You're also promoting communication. And now the lawyer is asking you, what is the emotional temperature of the decision maker in the other room? And this poses ethical problems for a mediator. What can I say? But frankly, it's not unethical for a lawyer to ask the question. So let's see what the mediator says.
Well, she is upset. And she's an artist, and she talks about her vision. She's also a businesswoman. And it may be that if you give her a business incentive for getting this done, which might be the lifts as well as some money, that might help. But I'm willing to try and just ask them hypothetically whether that might be of any interest.
Okay. That sounds good. I think we
Okay.
talked about it, and that would be a good idea.
Okay.
And that would be helpful to us because, you know, if they take our lifts, I guess that sends the signal that there was nothing wrong with them in the first place.
And that would help your reputation. Okay, let me see if there's any interest.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as a mediator, you might think, now what am I going to say in the other room? I'm presenting an idea. They may or may not like the idea. Am I going to say that it was the idea of the defense, which I'm carrying into the room? Am I going to suggest it's my idea, or am I going to leave everything kind of ambiguous? Clearly, it's helpful to the defense if you take it on as your idea, because they will listen to you in a way they would not listen to an offer from the defense. So let me show you just 1 minute of what she does in the other room to solve this problem.
TJ, you've been saying a lot today that you think that FAF could have resold the lifts that they made for you. Are they usable?
Oh, sure. They weren't usable for our particular purposes. We had very precise needs, and they were not usable for us, but they're functional lifts. In fact, I think, you know, the way they built them with this enormous base, they could probably hold an elephant. They're very functional.
Well, you did say earlier that you're working on bigger and better projects. Do you have any use for them?
You know, in the future, that's not beyond the realm of possibility. I am going to need lifts of some sort. I don't want that to detract from the damages that we experienced last summer with our grand opening.
But in the present, let's not forget about, you know, the money.
I understand. We're talking about money. What I was trying to figure out, frankly, is whether there's also a bargain to be had here, because I would guess that in the future, if you want the big lifts, they're going to cost a lot more than maybe you could get these traded for.
Right. I think there's a possibility for that. I'd have to think about the constraints of these lifts. You know, with that enormous base, I'd have to figure out how I could use them. But
well, you know a lot more about this than I do. Let's just put that aside for the moment as a possibility, and we'll come back to it if you think it makes sense.
Okay.
So you might think about whether, if you were a lawyer, the mediator's been helpful to you now in presenting the idea, because she's presented as her idea. She's not presented as it's their idea. And if you're a mediator, you might think about, am I willing to do this? Because this is one of the things that lawyers know mediators can do for them and do it effectively. I guess as a last point, I'd like to return to something we talked about this morning, which is evaluation, because I think this is another big reason that lawyers want and pay for mediators in the United States. Let me show you what this lawyer does. The same lawyer who just said, you know, don't forget about the money. We need money too. He later, while his client is out of the room, talks to the mediator privately about what he wants the mediator to do with his client. And I have these conversations, sometimes by telephone, sometimes by Zoom, sometimes I see people in hallways, sometimes they just send me little hints about what they would like me to do. But they clearly want me to do something to solve a problem they have with their client, which is usually about delivering the news to the client that there are problems with the legal case, which lawyers do not want to talk about. So here is the conversation, and then I'll show you a little bit about what the mediator decides to do. So asking a mediator to deliver bad news.
So, Eric, while my client's out of the room.
Oh, I should say, I was interested in showing different styles of mediators, so I asked a different mediator to start handling the case for the second half of the gentleman on the right, Eric Van Loon in the dark suit, is a mediator. He has replaced Linda Singer for purposes of teaching.
Maybe we could talk candidly about a problem that I'm having with my client, and that really has to do with the contract itself and the delivery date. I mean, you just heard it, that she feels very strongly about the damages that are associated with the failure to deliver this lift by the 7th. And I just think she's unwilling to sort of face up to the fact that the contract really gave him more time than that. I mean, in terms of the four corners of the contract, that certainly the parties talked about the 7th. Everybody knew when the opening was going to be. Everybody understood that the 7th was really crucial, but a judge might say, yes, but they really had 12 weeks, and the 12 weeks is a lot later in the game than that. So I think what I'm asking is, can you maybe help out here, help me with my client?
Sure, and I'm understanding you to say you have said this to her, but it hasn't really sunk in, and so I can reinforce what you've said, and that may help us with a breakthrough in terms of how we, the perspective on the numbers.
Yeah, I think she just needs to hear, a different voice really say the same thing, or to evaluate it from that standpoint, because I mean, I've told her that, but she lived it, and she knows that everybody knew what the opening date was, that everybody knew that the 7th was an important date, that they said, well, we'll be there a day late, if you will. I mean, everybody kind of thought that they were going to make it as far as that date's concerned, and she sees everything that happened after that date as hard damages. And maybe you could just go into the contract analysis a little bit more aggressively about the way a judge might look at it.
Okay, I'd be glad to do that when we're back in a caucus with her.
Okay, that'll help out, I think.
So you've just seen what I think is the most useful thing lawyers think a mediator can do for them, which is to tell the client things the lawyer doesn't want to say but that need to be said. And they will before I show you what he does, I have to tell you that when this happens, the lawyers will sometimes argue with me in the room, saying I'm wrong, when they know I'm right, but they just want to look like vigorous advocates for their client, but at the same time, have their client hear a bit of reality. And so my job as a mediator is to deliver the reality in a way that they can hear and will still feel good about me and feel confidence in me, but will avoid the difficulty of their lawyer admitting that there are problems with the case. So I will show you just for a couple of minutes what the mediator does, just so you can see. But I need to get the screen to share first. There.
There was one other part about going into court that I thought it would be helpful for us to discuss. People a lot of times have frustration with the court system because they don't really understand it. And the two things that I worry about for your case, CJ, in terms of how a judge might look at it, we all know exactly what the conversation was that you all had and how they knew June 5th was the opening, needed to be there for the June 22nd opening, and what that conversation was. And part of the dilemma is that got reduced into a written document called a contract and signed, and what the contract says is July. And best efforts to do it earlier, but the contract says July.
Let me stop there and just show you what he says at the very end. And this is what the lawyer says who's asked for this.
Well, we ought to talk about that. Appreciate your take on this, and I think we ought to just think about what he's had to say and talk to you about a new number, and we'll get right back to you.
Let me give you a few minutes to caucus. I'll come back and knock on the door in 5 or 10 minutes.
Thank you.
So there we are. The mediator's delivering a message, needs to be delivered. I guess what I would say, if you are a lawyer, is you can be an active consumer, an active shopper, an active participant in mediation. And there are things a mediator can do for you that would be very hard for you to do for yourself. If you're a mediator, now you can provide services and you have capabilities, I call them powers, that lawyers just don't have because they have a different role. And if you can provide those in an ethical and appropriate way, I think you can confer great value to the lawyers. And our experience first in America, I remember 20 years ago teaching in Europe and telling them that, you know, you lawyers, you could really use this, and seeing mediation take off in Europe and now in Asia. I think also in Africa, you will see lawyers increasingly saying, mediators can be very helpful to me in doing my work and keeping my relationship with my client. So with that, I'm going to stop. I thank you for listening, and I'm going to turn it back to the moderator with thanks for letting me speak to you.
Thank you, Prof, for your presentation. It was a timely one. However, 2 questions have come from where I sit. I'll make it snappy, noting that the other 2 presenters are waiting on call. I'll want to welcome Honorable Wanjala and Honorable Kendago, who are already joining us online. But then, Professor, 2 questions that are coming up from our viewers and also as I was walking around here. 1, what is the risk of sharing that power, the mediation power, and eventually, in so doing, you actually make the mediation collapse? What is the risk that is involved if you are to share the mediator's power with the advocates and they eventually defeat mediation? You've stated that in some states, the lawyers or the advocates have been so abrasive to the extent that they actually make the mediation collapse. That is 1. 2, there is the aspect where the advocates want to pass certain information through the mediator. And again, depending on the civic education that the clients have, that is the disputants have, it might equally appear that the mediator has taken a side. Where do you strike the balance?
I think the two questions are related. The problems with abrasive lawyers, yes, if we were talking about the power of the moderator, the mediator has to, and you saw it in the first video this morning when James Mangari interrupted the lawyer for the American company when he called the other side incompetent, to suggest that perhaps that was not the best word to use. He was using his power to keep the conversation civil. And mediators in the US have not been so good at doing that, perhaps because they're trying to be so facilitative that they don't intervene. The real problem, I think, is that when lawyers try to borrow the mediator powers, they borrow them, of course, to help their side. And so the immediate question for mediators is, what can I do without stepping over the line, as you say, and looking as if, for example, in Linda Singer presenting the idea that maybe the plaintiff could take some of the payment in terms of these big lifts. The concern is that the plaintiff would think the mediator was now on the side of the defense. And so it's careful, you have to be careful about how to phrase it. And she phrased it as an idea, not as something, you should do this instead of taking money. And so it does pose problems for the mediator. And I guess that's the second half of if we had, a full day, one might spend time thinking about how does the mediator respond and where are the dangers. I think the big danger is that your strongest power, I often tell people, and I'll stop with this, I always tell people, your biggest power as a mediator is not that you become smarter, more wise, more intelligent. I'm no more intelligent when I'm a mediator. The big change is that people see me as impartial. They see me as trying to help them. And as long as they think I'm trying to help them and help the other side, but help everybody, they're willing to listen to things they would not listen to from their opponent and consider options that they would not otherwise consider. So that's the key power. And yes, you're right. That's the key danger if you go too far in trying to help out one side and be seen as taking their side. I guess I'll stop there. You've seen a couple of good mediators work that balance in the video I showed you.
I will not take so much time. I'll want to invite Beryl, who will also call on the patron, who is has been christened your personal representative over here. So Beryl, kindly just do your do the Madam B thing. Patron.
Professor, thank you very much for that presentation. Insightful as always. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? I hope you can. I hope you can. I hope you can. I hope you can. I hope.
Now I'm not hearing.
Yes, I hope you can hear me now. All right. Mine is to say thank you for that presentation, and because we still have other speakers waiting online, yes, I see you nodding, so kind of means that we're communicating. Hopefully we can thank you when we see you personally with an African handshake, but I have a little gift for you. It is actually branded with the ICMC logo. You will discover what is in there, but because you're not here physically, I'm going to give this. I will trust the patron with your gift. I know James is your friend. There's a bromance thing that goes on between the two of you, so I hope your gift is safe in his hands. So on behalf of ICMC, yes, thank you very much for nodding. I know you can hear me. James will take this gift on your behalf, and hopefully when we meet in Montreal, we can give it to you.
Thank you very much. So, Professor, I'll bring you a gift to Montreal next year, June. We are meeting there, right? Good. Thank you very much, and let's give a clap to Professor for a good job done. And this is your gift, Professor. It's here, waiting for you. It's branded for you. See you in Montreal next year, June. Post-corona.
Thank you very much. And I will check on you when you're carrying that gift, patron. The other gift that I'd like to give out this afternoon is for Orit. I don't think Orit is still online. Will you be the custodian of that gift as well? Oh, my patron. But I was asked to have the chairman. Chairman, please come and accept this gift and hold it in custody and in trust for Orit, who made a presentation earlier this morning, for those of you who remember. Thank you very much. Yes, they can all go to Montreal with all of us. Thank you very much. I guess we can get to the next session. Who is moderating the next session? patron? Or is it no? My bad. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the next session, I'm told our presenter is online. Kendago, are you there? Kendago, are you there? Is she there? She's on, eh? Oh, good. Kendago, how are you?
Fantastic. There I am. A very good afternoon to all the participants in the ICMC, East Africa Regional Mediation Conference. I'm happy to be here.
Registrar in the High Court of Kenya in charge of the mediation desk. And she's going to talk to us about mediation and COVID-19, the Kenyan judiciary perspective. Let's hear from you, Kendago. The floor is yours. All the participants are now yours. Proceed. Proceed.
I hope I'm back on audio now.
You're using mine actually.
Something's not right.
My colleague, Honorable Wanjala, the registrar from Mediation Accreditation Committee. And I think that's why we're having the echo from the background. But we are very happy to join today's conversation. And we congratulate MTI and the organizers of this conference, such a timely conversation for us to come back to the drawing board and just look at what is it that we are doing as a region, what is it that we are doing as a country, and what are the best practices that we can pick globally in terms of the use and implementation of mediation. I'm happy to share a success story about Quarter Next mediation from the Kenya perspective, and with particular conversation around what we have been doing during the post-pandemic period. And my colleague will also join in and share quite a bit in terms of what we are looking at in the legal and policy framework towards the implementation of mediation. The chair and chairman and the mediators who are present, I'm happy to share that the judiciary has prioritized mediation, and I'm sure you have seen this out of the blueprint, that the institution's blueprints, the recent address by the Chief Justice in the State of Administration, in the judiciary, the STARGE, which is the social transformation through access to justice, the blueprint by the Chief Justice, and other institutional frameworks that have been put in place towards the use of Quarter Next mediation. For the period under review, post-pandemic, we currently have 17 mediation registries that are serving 50 courts, and these 50 courts are truncated into the different levels of courts that we have, stretching through from the Magistrates Court to the High Court to the Employment and Labor Relations Court to the Cadi's Court to the Environment and Land Court, and we also have the tribunals that are also implementing mediation. For implementation, I'm also excited to share that the judiciary has included parameters in the performance, measurement, and management to include a parameter that is being measured on the use, how the courts are promoting the use of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, and with an emphasis on court-annexed mediation, especially in the courts where court-annexed mediation has already been rolled out. Post-pandemic, the learning curve about the matters that were being sent to mediation was that there was need for an emphasis on sensitization. There was need to have conversations with our mediators around the uptake of mediation and with a particular inclination on virtual mediation. We were able to conduct several series of trainings with our mediators, and the conversations around then was to be able to pick up from mediators who are able to take up virtual mediation. What are the challenges that come in, or the experiences that the parties have around the use of virtual mediation? And then, of course, the conversation around what support the courts are able to give for those parties who would like to benefit from virtual mediation, but who do not have, perhaps are not able to access the facilities, the gadget or internet that would facilitate them to access virtual mediation. During the period, I think I've already mentioned about the sensitization and generally a shift towards a culture change, because during the period before the pandemic, the mediation sessions were being hosted at the court sessions, and those that were being hosted in the mediators' offices or other amenities where the parties were agreeable to host the mediation sessions from. So post the pandemic, with the introduction of a virtual mediation and the development of the virtual guidelines, it also came in with quite a bit in terms of conversations that were happening during the bring up mentions, which is a case management that has been put up by the judiciary to just ensure that we do not end up with a backlog in mediation, and at the same time to be able to have during those status confirmations, feedback from the parties around virtual mediation, be able to get feedback from the mediators in case there's any support that is required for parties that are undergoing the process, and then for us to also have conversations with the advocates generally regarding the facilitation of those the clients attending the virtual mediation, an orientation that we were quite leveraging a lot on the advocates to be able to assist the clients to understand what were the expectations when they logged in for virtual mediation. The conversations are practice directions, which force and reflecting, having the guidelines reflect the expectations, and in this particular context, conversation around confidentiality, so that we have our parties understand that even then, as they were undergoing virtual mediation, were still bound by the practice directions and the requirements around confidentiality. Again, to be able to pick up conversations on parties understanding what would happen should they wish that they have personal representatives or they have persons of choice whom they'd like to attend the mediation sessions. Apart from the training, of course, for the external, there was also quite a bit in terms of training for us, for the internal stakeholders. I'd mentioned a bit about the setting up of help desks, ICT help desks that would facilitate those who are not able to access facilities for virtual mediation. Again, to be able to have an orientation with the mediation registries for them to be able to understand what kind of support they would be having or what kind of support they would be giving, while at the same time maintaining the confidentiality clause with particular reference to where the mediator, the advocates, or the parties, the mediators had requested the court to set up the links for the virtual mediation. Among the issues that also came up during this time was that there was need for quite a lot of engagement and partnership with strategic partners to be able to pick up the conversations. So we intensified the conversations that we were having with the bar and bench committees, which is between the advocates and the judiciary in the court stations that are implementing mediation. But among the very key policy direction that was also taken during this period was the creation of committees that now involve the advocates, which is the bar, the bench, being the judiciary, and the mediators. So these committees were very strategic, especially at looking at what were the interventions that were required this period for us to be able to achieve a buy-in, not just in the use of mediation, but again, to be able to keep up or improve the settlement rate of the matters that were undergoing mediation during this period. Another success story during this period was also that there was a shift from the mandatory screening process where we would pick up the files that were at the registry and send them to mediation. And that while that still went on, we had quite a bit or an increase for mediations that were coming in out of requests by the parties themselves. And this would like to really attribute also the success, that the increase of the settlement rate to the fact that we were having parties who are willing and were choosing to go to court annex mediation as opposed to the mandatory screening and referral process that happened before that. We're also happy to share that there was a decline in the non-compliance rate from 11% to 6%, and quite a bit credit that we give to and the case management.
Looks like the other side. Something important I picked from our discussion. Shibak? Something important I picked from our discussion is where before the matter even goes for screening, the parties themselves are saying we want to go for mediation. That means like the parties have realized the importance of mediation. Why wait for screening? The screening might as well say this matter goes for trial. Yet the parties are saying no, as we want to go for the mediation. Now there was Wanjala also who was with her to present. Don't know what is happening. I think they were together. Has somebody spoken to her? Is she back? Wanjala? Just a minute, can you unmute?
I've unmuted. Can't be heard. I'm not on mute.
Now we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, so my colleague dropped out. She's trying to reconnect. Maybe I can just pick up from where she had left. My name is Moses Wanjala. I'm a registrar with the Mediation Accreditation Committee. And for those, probably for those who are joining, who are hearing this for the first time, we have been running mediation in the judiciary for the passed close to 6 years now, since 2015. And the way we do it in the Kenya judiciary, there are 2 steps involved. The first one is the accreditation of mediators for use in the court-annexed mediation program. And then the other one is the running of the program itself in terms of screening of files, referral to mediation, and the entire mediation process. So when we were hit by COVID, it affected the way we do things in court-annexed mediation, both in the running of the program and in the accreditation of mediators at the committee. My colleague had told you briefly about the steps that we did to intervene the situation and the outcomes and the success stories that you are able to get. Basically, there were four or five main areas that required urgent address, because when in-person meetings were cancelled, you couldn't get parties to sit together to do a mediation. So we had to invent some ways to address it. And one of the main areas that was a challenge to us is the legal framework, because we didn't have any legal framework that will support virtual mediations or even the accreditation of mediators virtually. So as a result of that, we had to see what could work for us. As a judiciary in general, there were practice directions on virtual court proceedings that were gazetted by the Chief Justice. So those were to cover court proceedings in the entire judiciary, and some aspects of it were also affecting mediation as a process. But within the same period, again, we worked on guidelines for virtual mediations that my colleague has talked about. And the guidelines are the ones we are using right now to conduct the virtual mediations that we have done so far. The other thing that we decided we will do is to include the aspect of virtual mediations in our rules. We had practice directions, and we have been working on draft court-annexed mediation rules. By that time, we didn't have any section on virtual proceedings or virtual mediations, but we had to go back to it, to the draft that we had, and we have now included. We actually made it to provide for both, so that if we are talking about mediation, it doesn't matter whether we are doing it physically or on the virtual platform. So the rules, once gazetted, will take care of that loophole that we had on the legal framework to support it. But in the meantime, we have guidelines that have helped us to do the virtual mediations that we have been able to do so far. The second area where there was a great challenge is on the creation of the respective capacities of the stakeholders and the players in this. And the stakeholders, the players include the advocates, the court, and the parties. For the court, I can proudly say probably we've taken some positive steps in building our ICT capacity in terms of internet connectivity, the gadgets that we use, and even some trainings. But the biggest challenge, of course, some law firms had already invested in it. Some are still doing that. Some are still struggling. But the biggest challenge is, of course, on the parties, and it remains a big challenge today. So that if the court is ready, the advocate is ready, but the parties are not ready in terms of capacity, then it will affect the virtual mediation that you may intend to undertake. And that affected also our accreditation, because the list of mediators that we have right now, the database going to 1,000, we receive physical applications, we review them physically. If there are interviews, we conduct physical interviews. But then it meant that there was need to introduce a virtual platform or online platform where those applications could be processed. And just say there were some applications that we had received from end of 2019, 2020, and they were pending for quite some time. We had already reviewed them internally as a committee, and we wanted to to conduct interviews. But the parties, most of the parties were not ready or willing to do a virtual interview. So we had to wait. I think the list went to around 200. And it was not until October, this year, October and November and September, that we cleared that backlog by way of physical interviews. But we are thinking how that capacity can be built so that even in the area of accreditation, you can file your application online, it can be reviewed online. If there's need for an interview, it's done virtually, and you get your accreditation virtually. So the judiciary set up ICT help desks to help parties build their capacity on virtual proceedings or mediations. But again, that is still something that needs to be relooked at, because actually a majority of the Kenyans do not have that capacity to participate in virtual mediations. Now, the third one that I'll talk about is training. There was need for training that was biased in favor of how to conduct virtual mediations. I know the trainers in the room can agree with me that most of our trainings were really geared towards you conducting physical mediations. So it got us on the wrong footing that we need our trainer to look at that and ensure that the mediators that they give out for accreditation have the capacity and competence to do virtual mediations and do it properly. So it is from the way we understand it, virtual mediation has two aspects that you need to be competent on. The first one is how to use the gadgets, the internet to connect, to use the various software that are required. But then the other area that is very critical is how to apply the basic principles that govern mediation the way it would be in a physical mediation. So rules of confidentiality, whether to record, whether not to record, who to admit, what happens if a party's call drops out, can I unmute a party who is speaking and is unruly? How will they take it if I mute them, and so on and so forth? I think that is an area that really requires critical relook at, because our mediators need to know that a virtual platform must meet the same requirements as a physical room in mediation. And the last one is acceptability of a virtual platform as a mediation room. I think for most of our people in this country, I can say, well, although there is no survey that has been done that I can point to, but what I know is that they are still not so comfortable, and it may need some culture change, some reorientation, some monetization, so on, that a virtual platform is a platform like any other. So if I and some people believe that if you sit with your disputant in the same room, and that's how you will be able to speak to the issues that affect you and agree on. But if someone joins online, you think that they were not serious, they were too far away, and whatever they were speaking was not, they didn't mean it. So we still have a long way to go. It might be easier on training institutions to build that capacity, on MAC to put measures in place to receive online applications and review them and conduct virtual interviews. For judiciary to instill capacity, to put capacity in place for the mediators and the other participants. There is still so much that requires to be done on the side of the parties. So I think that's what I wanted to say. I don't know whether, Mheshimiwa, you have looked back in. Okay. Thank you. If you can unmute, Honorable Kenda.
There is a participant who is online called Paul Kita. He is asking, what are the disadvantages of online mediation? Disadvantages of online mediation. Wanjala.
The advantages. The advantages. There's a problem with listening. So have I been, no, I can see my microphone is on. Can I be heard? Okay, you ask about the advantages of online mediation.
The negative side, disadvantages.
Okay, sorry. So just like virtual court proceedings, it's a bit tricky to, as a mediator, to control what, to know what really is going on. One of the challenges we've been having is that, if, for example, you are doing a hearing, and you didn't want certain parties to be present, you'll just tell them to clear the court, and you can see them walk out. But if someone is joining from the other end, and you didn't want some people to be in, and they are seated somewhere in a certain corner, it might be difficult for you to know. So the advantage is that there is a possibility of people sitting in the mediation that you didn't know, or you didn't want them to be present, or the parties didn't want them to be present. Number two, a mediator, a party who does not want to engage can frustrate the technology just to run away. So if I participate and I reach a point where I don't want, I'll just log out, or I'll pretend that I'm having internet issues, and that is it. But if we are there in the same room, and we have agreed on the rules of engagement and so on, at least as a mediator, it will be easy for you to talk to the parties, to see whether they can, to urge them to see whether the process can proceed. But if I'm joined virtually, I can just decide to leave the meeting, and that is it. Number three, if you don't have mechanisms in place for signature for signing of the agreement, immediately you are done. If you are hoping that after the mediation you will wait, you will now prepare a document and then send to them to sign, or wait for them to come and sign. And then the intervening period, they may go back on what they had agreed. For a physical mediation, once you are done, you have both of them in the room and they can sign. So that is also I think an advantage on the physical mediation, but a disadvantage on the side of the virtual mediation. Now, again, you wouldn't really have it. For me, I think it takes away some of your capacity to understand and control the environment that the mediation is taking place, because if someone is recording the proceedings, has a gadget, a separate gadget recording the proceedings from the other end, you might not know. If the system is hacked in between, and someone records it, and you get it aired elsewhere, you see you don't really have that control of the confidentiality that you may ordinarily have if it is in a physical mediation session. Of course, if the internet is not stable, it keeps on breaking. It breaks the flow of the conversation. Because you can imagine, so you are just about to agree on a certain point and someone drops out. They take a lot of time to rejoin again, and you lose the thought process, you go back on it again, and so on and so forth. So those are just some of the challenges that they're actually procedural. They're actually procedural. Most of them. Thank you.
Honorable Wanjala, good afternoon to you. We would have loved to have you in the discussion that we had earlier today, it really would have been nice to have you because you would have, thrown a lot of light on some of the issues that we had this morning. But I just wanted to ask, the advocate's remuneration order really does not take care of payment of legal fees for mediators per se. And, we were laughing at lawyers in the morning and saying how, in a way, the general feeling out there is that lawyers stifle the mediation process. But I'm asking this from the perspective of, I don't know how much people are paid for briefs now, but I know there was some time when it was just 20,000, Kenya shillings per brief. My question really is there a guideline towards unifying costs, for arbitration briefs, for mediation? Is this something that you're working on? Because maybe it would help. Just try to, so that we are all on the same page. Is this something that the judiciary is looking at? Thank you.
I proceed and answer, 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 proceed and answer.
Oh, he says I repeat. Honorable Wanjala, did you ask that I repeat the question?
Asking whether I can, okay, I can answer the question, then I got it. So the advocacy that we have currently does not have specific provisions for remuneration of advocates representing parties at a mediation. So we don't have specific items that will indicate to them or to a taxing officer that this is what you should charge for doing this or for doing that. But that does not preclude an advocate from participating in a mediation to represent a party and to proceed and charge fees. Essentially, what happens is that by the time the case gets to mediation, it will already have been filed in the registry in the normal manner. And an advocate will already have agreed with the client on the issues of instruction fees and other fees. Now, when you attend in a mediation session, it's like you are attending court for, you can charge for attendances the way you normally charge in court. And that's what we think the advocate should be using for now. But there is a effort to have that ARO reviewed to have specific provisions, items on how to charge during a mediation session. I know the Chief Justice had put in place a team that was looking at a scale of fees for the advocates that appear before the small claims court. That will be separate from the normal ARO that we have. We do not wish that one for mediation should be separate, but what we are thinking is to have it amended so that it has specific provisions for representing a party during the mediation proceedings. So it's not like you will charge instruction fees afresh. If you had already charged the party when the case was still before the judge or the judicial officer, you don't now open a new file and charge instruction fees afresh for mediation. You continue from where you had left. That's what we expect the advocates to be doing.
Okay, there's another question from an online participant who is saying, due to the backlog, it seems there was no time to give orientation to the newly admitted court mediators on a court annexed mediation. Now, can you advise what if a solution is being done about that?
Has been a lull from our end on continuous induction of our mediators. That was our intention from day one, that mediators will be inducted as often as possible, because their training probably did not include any aspects on court annexed mediation. And court annexed mediation, as it is, has its own unique attributes that you might not find them in the normal mediation that you do out there. So for all the mediators we accredit, and for those who are here, don't assume that you are trained in mediation and you will just walk into court annexed mediation and do it well. You might be frustrated and give up, because you need to know the processes of how it works. Now, due to COVID-19, it was tricky for us to continue with the inductions, but we are planning. We have been having online sessions with mediators regionally, especially those that joined in, that were accredited and had not benefited from the induction sessions. We normally have regional sessions with the mediators. For example, we have had a session with mediators in Nyeri, or mediators in Kakamega, or mediators in Kisumu. But if you join in, you will ask questions, we will interact with you, but they will be general questions, and they might involve other issues that are not necessarily linked to induction. But there are a set of documents that with the help of a consultant we prepared, and we believe those documents will really assist us if we implement them to ensure that everyone is brought to the same level before they are given their first case. One of them are guidelines on mentorship, so that even if you have not had the privilege of being inducted, that you are accredited and assigned to a mentor who has already undertaken several court annexed mediations, and that will be able to induct you into the process so that you don't mess. In the interviews that we did in September and October, out of all those that were successful, around 90% of them were placed on mentorship, because we do not believe right now that the people who are being trained currently, that you can just get to it and do it the right way. So mentorship will really assist, so that even if you've not had the induction, at least you'll have the opportunity to be walked through the process before you can now have the eligibility to be given the first case. But inductions, we recognize, are a very critical aspect of it. And we also encourage the training institutions. We normally tell them to have a session on court annexed mediation. However, at least 30 minutes or 1 hour, you slot in, and we are always available, so that they get to know that this is how court annexed mediation works, and when they come, they will not be they will not be out of place. So we are planning for some sessions next year, virtually mostly, with the regions. We can't do it for the whole team of almost 1,000 or so, but we will be doing them regional, so that you can get to understand what goes on in court annexed mediation. But the area that they will really benefit is the one on mentorship.
Anybody else with a question, comment, advice? Thank you very much, Wanjala and Kendagor. Next time we hope to have you physically with us. I think it has been very useful to hear from you.
It will end a bit early so that we drive back, probably even yesterday, but it has dragged on. So I've heard there was a session that you really needed our presence, but our apologies. We hope we can be able to address your questions every time. But thank you for the invitation as well.
Thank you. May I hand back the mic to our overall coordinator?
Thank you for that moderation. We are almost winding down, and we now would like to ask our chairman, most graciously, to probably give us a few minutes to hear what is the way forward. We must have a call to action. We've gathered, we've heard, we have raised issues, we are decision makers, we are leaders. Thank you. So we want to do a way forward. A way forward is what is the call to action. Issues were raised, the plenary lists some issues. So we document them, and then we agree where do we go from here. The people who are operating the virtual platform, please just read out a name of somebody or anyone who has a comment written or a hand raised so that they can be integrated on the way forward. Could I just ask anyone in the room if somebody has a way forward? And you just give it brief, eh? You know, as we say, I was blind, now I can see. That's the way we want to do it, so that we can redeem on time. Do you have anyone in the floor who has a way forward? Do you have anyone online? Yes, who is online?
So we have Caroline Kendago.
Yeah.
She provided information on emails for inquiries. There are emails for inquiries on court annex mediation.
So can we give her a few minutes? Like 5 minutes? Is she on?
No, she sent a chat message.
She sent a chat message. So how do you read it out? Do you screenshot it? Can you project it? As we wait for that, anyone else? Anyone else on the platform? Else in the room? You know the cake has come, so our minds have shifted, are likely to shift. Do we have? Just enlarge it so that we can read it out. You can blow it out? You can't, eh? No, it's difficult to read. That's what I've been asking them to do. Can you read from the back, please?
Okay, so there is a question that's coming from Paul Kita again, and he's asking, what is the minimum session one on mentorship supposed to undergo? I'll take that again. What is the minimum session one on mentorship supposed to undergo? I'm not sure it's very clear.
No, it is clear.
All right.
Preton will
Thank
answer
you.
that. Any other question? We can take more than one question so that we redeem time, please. Hesbon, please read for us.
We have two people with the questions. They have raised up their hands. We have Rogers Lucano.
Please remove your mask. It's difficult to hear. Yes.
We have Rogers Lucano with a question. Allow him to talk, please.
Yes. Could you get Rogers on? And you'll raise the volume on that side, please. You need to raise the sound from the back.
Yeah, from Honorable Wanjala. And the question was, do we have members who are members in MAC who are mediators, trained mediators, not arbitrators who have not arbitrators who have trained as mediators? Do we have mediators who are members of MAC? Number two, are there plans to accredit the training institutions by MAC? Because the question is, how do we regulate these institutions? Thank you. Those were the two questions. Was I audible?
One is whether the members that sit on MAC are actually trained mediators. And secondly is a question on regulations. I would like Wanjala, Honorable Wanjala or Kendago to please respond to that. Unmute them and let them respond.
Okay, I can see I have been unmuted and I can respond. So on members of MAC who are trained mediators, the answer is yes. As a matter of fact, as we speak now, all the members of MAC have undergone at least a 40-hour training. There are those that had already trained before they were appointed to the committee. There are those that have undergone training during their service on the committee. So they don't practice probably under the Quota Annexed Mediation Program, but they are trained mediators and they understand what mediation is. On the number of sessions for mentorship, I said we have developed a set of 4 documents with the help of a consultant, which were completed and adopted by the committee. I think it was in September. And we are working on implementable versions, and we'll be rolling them out in the course of next year. Those mentorship guidelines indicate to us how many hours, how many sessions you should be with your mentor, how many of those sessions will you be observing, how many of those sessions you can co-mediate, and the reports that will be required to be filed by your mentor before we can consider for your full accreditation. So what we are doing now, because we didn't have these guidelines in place, we were referring those applicants for mentorship, and we will base so much on how much the report, on how the report is, the report that we get from the mentor. Ordinarily, we look at 3, 4, 5 sessions or more of at least co-mediating, not just observing. But some of them take more because for observation, you can observe in several sessions, but you need to reach a point where you can participate in the mediation, either through co-mediation or even mediating on your own, before we can say that you are in a position to do on your own. But the guidelines on mentorship, once we get an implementable version early next year, we will share with those affected so that you can know what will be required of you when you are referred to the mentorship program. On accreditation of institutions, we developed 2 documents. Among those 4, there is a training manual and a training curriculum for mediators. Now, the training curriculum doesn't mean that we intend to start training now. It is the minimum that we expect the training institutions to at least have. So if you are saying that for us to continue engaging with you, we will require, for example, that if you have a class of 25 people, it must have 1 lead trainer and 2 assisting trainers, for example, that you must have at least in your trainings, it must have at least a minimum of these hours for role plays and so on. So that when we engage with the training institutions, we are looking at what they already have and what they are doing and what they are intending to do, so that they can improve on their training, on their trainings, and reach a point where then the training aspect will not be an issue. But as of now, what we have been doing is that we deal with the applications as they come. So we have not had a formal engagement with the training institutions. We might not go to a level of accrediting them because we don't have that legal mandate to accredit or to accredit training institutions, but we recommend the Act. The Act gives power to the Mediation Accreditation Committee to recommend appropriate training criteria for mediators. So for us, we develop a criteria, we share with the trainers, we engage with them, and probably after the engagement, some of them probably will need more time to put measures in place and so on. And that is how eventually we will end up with those ones that are complying. Those ones that will not be able to comply, unfortunately, then we will reach a point where we can't accredit your trainees because you have failed to meet these standards. So essentially, it's not like we will have accredited you, because accrediting you would mean that the people you train must then get automatic accreditation by us. We believe in what you do. But what we will do is we will accredit standards, and we will use the training.
Angela, are you there? Are you there or you are gone? Hello? Is he there? Is he in the system? Technical? Yeah. So there's no need why I should ask him that. There's a question I wanted to ask him on mentorship, but because he's not there, probably then I'll need to meet him personally and ask him about it, because I wanted to ask if the consultant who was given an opportunity to draft that mentorship criteria, whether he had to consult, whether he based it on an existing criteria or he borrowed it from jurisdictions, and whether those jurisdictions have the same system, the way we have in our training, because training is not the same. We have customized the training to meet our own cultural needs. And the other thing I really wanted him to answer is on whether those ones who have existing mentorship programs, have they looked at those existing mentorship programs? Are they going to approve mentorship programs based on that criteria? And what if that criteria is an inferior criteria for the purpose of ensuring that people who qualify are fit for that? Then the other thing I was asking about this accreditation, are they accrediting only for court annex mediators or also for private mediators? Where does it, to what extent does it extend? So those are some of the issues I wanted him to elaborate on, but because he's not there, probably they'll meet him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mwalimu, as always. Do we have any other question? Do we? Do we have anyone online? So I think what we'll do, we'll take the points, and there will be our action points to follow up, because we've been given 2 email addresses by Honorable Kendago, where we can write and ask questions, seeking responses, so that from here we have something to follow through. So by the time we have the next conference, or in between, we are able to say this is what was asked. Yeah. Okay, fine. So there are questions for her. Mwalimu can now ask. Could you put her on?
Thank you very much. I think we were struggling through with the. If you can hear me now.
So can we ask our questions? I probably will come directly to Honorable Kendago and Honorable Wanjala. So
Thank you. We are both back on the call.
With mentorship. Honorable Wanjala has just told us that there is a consultant who worked on mentorship guidelines, and they may go back to operations next year. What I was asking is that did that document that is going to that's going to be published as guidelines, has it been shared with the people who are practicing mediators, and their comments allowed? Have you taken into account that there are existing mentorship programs that we have in the country that have already been approved and meet international standards? Or do you want probably to say those are minimum standards? Then, on the issue about curriculums, is that curriculum going to guide court annex mediators, or is it going to affect private mediators? Are all these guidelines that we have come up with affecting only court annex mediators or private mediators, or mediators generally? Those are issues. So I've asked 2 questions there on the issue to do with mentorship and also on training curriculums. I'm asking because I also see it as a person in charge of program appraisals for the International Mediation Institute, and I do it worldwide. And we have existing programs right now, and it's good that Honorable Wanjala said those are minimum guidelines. But on the issue of mentorship, we have not seen the document, but I'm still asking, will it affect the existing mentorship programs that are already in existence? And lastly, another question, are mentors supposed to be trained mentors, or anybody who has been practicing can be a mentor? Because mentorship is a skill. You cannot just mentor a person by person sitting next to you, or a person learning something from you. Mentorship is a skill. What about online mentorship? Because other institutions are doing online mentorship. Are you going to recognize online mentorship also? Those are 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe you can unmute the mic for Honorable Angela so you can answer the questions on the issue of accreditation. Thank you very much, Mediator Magerere. We're requesting if you could unmute the mic for Honorable Anjala so he can take up the questions on the issue of mentorship and the issue of the curriculum.
They are very good questions for the program. Now, the Mediation Accreditation Committee made these documents for its use. It did not make these documents for application by some other national entity somewhere, but for the sake of the Mediation Accreditation Committee. So, if there are complaints about training institutions, about how they are training or not, the committee wanted to have sort of a guideline on its mediator in this country, and you want to be accredited by the Mediation Accreditation Committee, then we will have to look at the institution that trained you. And then we will see whether that institution meets our basic minimum guidelines that we have adopted. So it will not affect the mediators who are practicing out there and who do not intend to be accredited by MAC. But if you intend to be accredited by MAC and you are trained by an institution, then MAC will want to know whether that institution is meeting the minimum standards that the committee wants or it does not. It is true, and that is a good point, that mentors need not only to be trained, but under the guidelines that we have developed, there is a criteria on how the mentors will be identified. That is under the program, the Court Annexed Mediation Program. So there is a whole guide on how the mentor will be identified, how they will be linked with the mentee, how long the duration will take, what kind of reports we'll expect, and so on. And of course, for you to be identified as a mentor, then you will need to meet that criteria. Are you trained? How many mediations have you done? And so on and so forth, so that you don't just pick anyone and assume that they will do mentorship. Number 3, that does not supplant or take away mentorship from any other area, because judiciary does not have, most employers don't employ people to just mentor them. We were expecting our mediators to be working on the cases and assisting parties to resolve disputes. We are only coming in so that we build capacity and ensure that the young mediators have someone who can hold their hand, especially if they can't get that mentorship elsewhere. But if an institution is already running a mentorship program and a person submits to us evidence or documentation to show that they, apart from the training, they have been mentored, and the committee acknowledges that mentorship, then you are accredited. We won't require you to again go over the same process again. And I don't think we even have the capacity to mentor everyone. We would rather leave that to some institutions that may do that. So we're not ruling out mentorship that other institutions have put in place. After all, we can't accept that you can train someone that you accredit and then say that you can't mentor that person. So part of the engagement will be, even on mentorship, if an institution has put in place a good mentorship program that the committee is comfortable with, then we will only need the documentation to confirm that a person went through that mentorship. The documents were developed by a consultant, and she did a public participation. The documents will not be implemented until they are sent to the institutions. So we can't. We will. I told you we are preparing sort of an abridged version, an implementable version. And the first thing is for the training institutions will be to share the documents with them, and then arrange for a workshop with them, so that we can get their views and their ideas on how well the document can be implemented, and then we can from there agree on how to proceed. Because you agree with me that there are so many training institutions on board that are not doing the right thing, and members of the public have been complaining. So if at that workshop it is agreed that this is what we intend to be doing, and we can give ourselves 3 months to comply, then that is what we will apply. So it's not like what they call it, like something that is one-sided. It is an engagement, because we also need those training institutions to be there, because they are the ones that train the mediators that we accredit. And we also are alive to the peculiar needs of those institutions, where the environment that they operate in. But similarly, we are also concerned about the quality of training. Today in our discussion, we had someone say that because she's a staff at our registry, a mediator comes in and she asks him whether he did some caucus, and he does not understand what caucus is. This is someone who's telling you that they have gone through the training. So you see, if you don't at one point wake up and fix that, then you will ruin the program by not having good training practices. Online mentorship, yes, why not? In fact, we said one of the challenges we've had during COVID is that it's not possible to have everything done physically. So if it is online mentorship, and this is an area that we can explore, get views and agree on what needs to be done, what needs to be filed and how, then it's not something that we can rule out, and especially on mentorship. Now this one, the issue of mentorship will tie in with the CPD guidelines. That's the 4th document, the training manual, the training curriculum, mentorship guidelines, and CPD guidelines. So the CPD will then take care of the growth of a mediator who is accredited, issues of retraining, issues of capacity building, and issues on, and if your performance, if we see that your performance is not okay, not that you need to do miracles, but if you are a mediator, you are given 10 cases, you manage to get only 1 settlement, another one gets 8 settlements. We give you another 10, you only get 1, another one gets 9. You can't say that you are only getting difficult cases. So there could be something that we need to have a discussion with you. Do you need a refresher course? Do you need even mentorship? Do you maybe need to even do the course afresh? Do you need, what is it that is required of you? So we are looking at the new entrants that need mentorship. We are looking at those in the field that need CPD. And we are also looking at the source where these mediators were trained, so that the training institutions also meet those guidelines. We accredit mediators that take part in court annexed mediation. The Act is not clear as the act that establishes MAC just says that the committee shall accredit mediators. It does not say that we accredit them for court-annexed mediation. But so far, for you to get a case under the court-annexed mediation program, you must be accredited by the Mediation Accreditation Committee. But there are so many people doing mediations out there who are not accredited by the committee. We are hoping that if we are able to set good standards in the judiciary under our court-annexed mediation program, it will have a bearing on the quality of mediation practice that also happens outside there. Thank you.
In question? Yes, Honorable Kandago, please go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Honorable Anjala, and we thank MTI and ICMC for the conference. We welcome feedback, so what we might have missed in the conversations that you had today, we'll be very happy to interact with the organizing team, so we can see what are the areas that we can pick as a learning curve for us in the implementation of court-annexed mediation, and at the same time be able to pick up in terms of the resolutions and the way forward that you, our mediators, have picked up as areas that might perhaps require attention in terms of policy, regulation, or just guidelines that would help us not only to improve the uptake of court-annexed mediation, but again, improve on the settlement rate that we have on in court-annexed mediation. So I thank the organization, and we are looking forward to more interaction to be able to see on how all of us can leverage on the resolutions that were emanating out of the conference.
Honorable Kedago, do you have any other question for her? Thank you very much. We will get in touch. Do you have any other questions? You see, we have to leave the resolutions of the conference. Yes, there's a question at the back.
My question is out of experience. I have experienced when I had a case where advocates were involved, and I was looking for the contacts of the clients, and one advocate cooperated, but the other one did not cooperate to give me the contacts. Is there anything that the court annex can do to give us the contacts of the clients that they have given us? That's my question.
Thank you. It sounds like an operational question. I'm not sure whether ICMC is in a position to answer that question, but I stand guided.
Thank you very much. Maybe if I can respond to that with your permission. So we are building up on the kind of screening that we are doing for the matters that are coming to mediation, and I must thank the patron. I know this has been an issue that has been very dear with him and MTI, with particular focus on training of officers who undertake the implementation of court-annexed mediation. with that in mind, we are also leveraging a lot on technology for the e-filing systems that we are having. And we are hoping that will quite add to the contacts that we are getting for not just the parties, but also not just for the advocates, but also for the parties. And in the screening guidelines that we're having with the teams at the registry, is that one of the major issues is we also do not want to end up with, as I mentioned, backlog in mediation. So the cases that would be referring and giving our mediators, we are hoping are cases where we already have established contact with the parties. We have explained the process of court annexed mediation and the expectations in terms of roles and responsibilities to these parties, and the experience of our mediator shouldn't be an experience that would happen in the coming future. But if you still have cases that are having challenges like this, please feel free to just pick up with the mediation deputy registrars that are serving in the courts implementing mediation. And then we'd also really like to have this feedback coming in on real-time basis so that we don't have to wait until the time when the matters have taken quite a length of time in mediation before we can have this kind of status update. So with the update coming in and the active case management that we are having for the matters that are in mediation, we should be able to address some of the challenges that are coming in, especially with the inability to either get the contacts or when you have instances of non-compliance by the parties. Thank you, and back to you, moderator.
For your responses and for availing emails and having an open door system for mediators to come to you. There was a question that was asked. I don't know that it was answered successfully, Madam. Was your question answered successfully? We have people in the house who would like to respond. Mr. Chacha would like to do that? Is it about Thank you. I'll give the mic to the chairman to make his remarks, and thank you, Chairman. Actually, we were now at the primary where we're getting the way forward. So you just thank that we will put together the questions for you, and then it comes up with this resolution.
Thank you very much, Zippy. I think everyone will agree with me that it's been a fruitful day. It's been it has been a successful one-day conference. So I think we should all pat ourselves on the back. And we also especially appreciate everybody who has attended, both physically and virtually, and the input that they have given to make the conference the success that it has been, I think are to be appreciated. Very specifically, all those who are in the arrangement, and I am not going to attempt to name everybody, because when you do that, you tend to leave out accidentally one or two people, and that's not good. But I want to appreciate the team, the committee that has been organizing this on behalf of the board. I, of course, appreciate the board itself. I want to appreciate all those who have partnered with us in whatever ways, whether it is the IT people, whether it is the hotel. We just say thank you very much for your contribution to make the conference a successful one. I understand from Zippy that the issues that have come in are going to be formatted into resolutions. And conference notes. Okay. So yeah, so that you don't feel that we've left the issue hanging at the end. So I think, yeah, asanteni sana. Thanks, really. I don't think there's much more that I want to say beyond that, other than to feel good that it's been successful. I think we have learned a lot. Of course, we are especially grateful to those who have made presentations, both locally and overseas. I was at some point trying to work out in my mind. It must have been an interesting night for Professor Deutsch, because I guess he woke up to make his first presentation. Then I guess he must have gone back to sleep and then woken up again for, yeah. So that's commitment. We thank him. We thank the lady, the lady mediator, Orit, yes, from Israel. Yeah, and those who participated virtually, though they were local. Thank you very much. Zippy, have I... Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, as you go, may you have a safe journeys wherever you're going, and have a blessed weekend ahead. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, I have a token of appreciation for everyone who made this event a success. We are very grateful, just like the chairman has said. I have a token of appreciation for everyone in the room, but symbolically, we are going to give a few people the gifts, the rest we will give you. The first person to get a gift will be the chairperson of the board. He was very instrumental in the planning of this event, and so I would ask him to come in front and take his token. And you can be generous with your claps also, as he's given the gift. As the chairman is leaving, we'll have our patron come next. We thank you very much, Mr. Patron, for working with us throughout this journey. After the patron, we have Madame Beryl, who was, by the way, one of the sponsors of this event and also a presenter. Madame Beryl, thank you very much. She's called Madame B. After Beryl, we have some other presenters who are here, but they are not here physically, and we have the gifts for them. We have Honorable Kendagor, Honorable Wanjala. We will give them their gifts later. The gifts are there. Then we have Hosea Manwa of TYBA. Are here, we will give you. Then we have those people who are in the conference planning committee. We have our chair, Madam Lydia Mireri. She has spent sleepless nights planning this. Madam Lydia, we appreciate the role you've taken, and may God bless you. Madam Lydia worked very closely with Zippy Musimi. Zippy also spent full days, sleepless nights to ensure that this is a success. Zippy, thank you very much. Then we have the vice president of the vice chair of the board, Madam Nzou, Dr. Nzou. Dr. Nzou has also been very, very helpful. She's given us her wealth of expertise. May God bless you too. With us is the organizing, is the General Secretary, Mr. Chacha. Mr. Chacha has also worked with us in this journey. Mr. Chacha, thank you very much. I cannot forget a board member, Honorable Yofnali Sokubo, all the way from Tanzania, just came to ensure that this event is a success. Thank you, Honorable. We also have Mr. Wasuna with us. Mr. Wasuna has helped us. He came all the way from Luoland, I think, or Kisumu, just to be here in this event. We have Dr. Gidudwa. Dr. Gidudwa has worked with us. He personally came for the letters and took them to our visitors. Thank you very much, Daktari. Dr. Reverend Gidudwa. And last but not least, we want to recognize Mr. Okenye. Mr. Okenye, somebody can take on his behalf. Okenye has also, oh, he is around, I'm so sorry. He's also a board member, and he has worked with us. We have the technical team behind there. I have the gift, your gifts with me. We have all the members and the secretariat, members of the secretariat. Thank you very much. And do have a blessed evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are coming to the end of our program, our conference today. So we have Kokebe, who was here, our organizing secretary. He will get his present. Now, I would like young men, please come and set this for us here. So while they are setting that, we are going to close now, and our closing is in 2 sessions. One is called thanks, which we have already begun because we have thanked ourselves and thanked the participants, even those online. I'm off. Okay, fine. If you are still there, we thank you. And we have started our closing ceremony. So, the mic is not good enough. I don't know if the battery. So number 2, we would like now to cut the cake symbolically. We want to cut the cake, and this cake is going to be moderated and run by the patron, Mr. James Mangarere. Welcome, and helped by the Vice Chair, Dr. Beatrice Nzou. I want this to be in the middle here, please. And they will be flagged by the chairman, Justice Charles Nyachai. So I am going to move back. Yes. Now, after the symbolic of the cake, Evelyn is going to give each one of you the one you are going to chew, right? So don't go away. Then while you receive, you come forward. We are going to take a photograph right here, facing the cameras. Our background as indicated. So, Chairman, get ready. Get ready, 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 ready. Ready, 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 ready. ICMC first. Regional Conference. Pigeni makofi. The studio now for ululation. Studio, quickly, everybody will stand up. We want to have some fanfare. The studio. Members, studio, bring those gifts very quickly. Now we are winding up where you have your bite, your other bite to carry home. So as we do that now, I am going to ask the studio. Okay, I want to ask the studio to play for us the East African anthem. Don't go, we will be eating so that we want to multitask. So we shall just stand at attention. We do our national anthem, East African first, and then the national anthem. So are we ready? Studio? East African anthem, one stanza. Stay at attention, don't be caught eating. East African anthem. One stanza, don't forget. Ready?
Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu.
much. Let's clap for ourselves again. Then now you sit down, you receive this one, the yellow one, as you eat, and then you leave at your own pleasure. And the studio, you can put on some music that is slow to help the cake to roll down the throat. Bye-bye, and see you next year or around the 2nd of December, 2022.
My name is James Mangerere. I'm the President, Mediation Training Institute, and also the patron of the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators. Mediation is an alternative dispute resolution process where a third party comes in to assist parties to negotiate and come up with their own solution. What the mediator does is to give people capacity to resolve their own conflicts. Mediation has been growing in this country for several years now. It's in our courts, it's in private sector, and therefore it's something that is with us here now. And we are inviting all practicing and non-practicing mediators and other professionals from other sectors to join us in this very important occasion of promoting mediation within our region. We have presenters from all over the world. We have presenters from America, from Israel, from Singapore, who will be available to grace this very important occasion and also to educate us more and open the scope of mediation in this continent. Welcome everybody to this very important occasion. Please do not miss out.
My name is Charles Nechai. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya for the last 36 years. I am currently also serving as a judge of the East African Court of Justice. I'm a member of the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators, ICMC, currently serving on the board as the chair of the board. And I want to take this opportunity to invite all of you. This conference will be both virtual and physical. The theme of the conference is a new beginning, mediation amid COVID. I thank you very much.
My name is Dr. Beatrice Nzol, a chartered mediator and the vice chair of ICMC East Africa. Do mediators face challenges in line of their duties? I believe they do. Some of the challenges would be getting customers, and the other one would be the way they're being paid for their services. For us to be able to address these challenges, I invite you to join us as we learn and address the challenges that face us as mediators in a line of duty. Have a blessed time.